What's going on, folks? In case you haven't seen the news or gotten on Facebook or just otherwise live under a rock, I wanted to let you know there is just a massive hurricane pounding the coast of South Texas right now. Hurricane Harvey originally hit around Rockport, which I'm pretty familiar with Rockport. I went on a fishing trip earlier this spring and kind of moved up the Texas coast into the Galveston area, caused a lot of flooding in Houston, and is now moving up kind of through South and Central Texas. So just keep South Texas in your thoughts and prayers. But I mostly just wanted to talk about kind of the severity of this storm and the Texan response. Now, this is not as big as Katrina, but it's definitely in the same league. This is the biggest storm that's hit Texas since 1961. And that storm was only slightly bigger, but the population of Texas is much larger since 1961. So the number of people affected by this storm is greater than any other storm that's ever hit Texas. And it's a huge storm just in terms of total area as well. Just the amount of flooding it's causing on the coast, but also inland, is pretty significant. One stat that really got my attention. So the San Bernard River, which it's south, I think it enters the Gulf southwest of Galveston, close to Freeport area. That river normally runs about a little over 3 feet deep with 20 cubic feet per second. And right now it's at 34 feet deep and 12,000 cubic feet per second and rising. That's the kind of flooding we're talking about. We're literally seeing stoplights completely buried underwater, big bridges that are full all the way up to the top with water coming over the top of the bridge. We're seeing boats going down central streets in Houston. And this is a big storm. So I know that the National Guard is starting to be deployed to the area. I know that Texas Task Force 1 has been partially deployed to the area. The Coast Guard's been on the scene the entire time. But what I really want to focus on, and something that really strikes me different in how this emergency has been handled versus something like Katrina, is just the amount of local response. I know we can talk about, the National Guard response and what FEMA's doing and all that stuff all the time. But if you look on just about every news clip, yeah, you'll see police and EMS and fire. But what you'll always see is the neighbors driving down the street in their big Cummins truck. You'll see the Super Duty pulling somebody out who needs help. You'll see bass trackers and skeeter bass boats and bayliners driving down, big streets to rescue people who are standing on their roofs. The private help provided by just neighbors and people who just know people who are in need and are willing to help is pretty amazing. And it's something that I think is remarkably different than a situation with Katrina. And to me, this says just a lot about the attitude of the Texan people. Now, you can go into a grocery store and a gas station in South Texas and you'll see that everything's completely sold out. People stocked up, people prepared. And there will always be some people who are very vigilant and very prepared, and there will always be some people who are completely unprepared and just don't have anything stocked up, who are always basically going to be the victim in this sort of situation. But there are those who are there to help, those who have traveled a long way just to help others in need. And I think that attitude is pretty remarkable, and that attitude is an amazing way to look at disaster recovery. And so I kind of take this to heart as a message to, for myself to be a little bit more prepared, but also to look more at how can I be somebody who's, I'm prepared and I'm taking care of for myself, so how can I use that to help others rather than being a liability to others. I think that's really important. I think we should all look at how we can, take care of our own homes, but then once we get there, how we can reach and take care of others. And not to be one of those victims who has to be pulled out and rescued, but to understand that those people will always be here. And to understand that, it's good to be prepared and it's good to be willing to help. But I think this response is just categorically different than what we saw with Katrina, where there was all kinds of violence and looting and people really trying to take advantage of the situation, take advantage of all the destruction and flooding and people in need. Now, we're gonna see some of that. I guarantee it. We're just into this storm right now. We're seeing the early evacuation. We're definitely gonna see some of that, and I predict it's primarily gonna happen in, you know, places where they're crowding lots of people who are evacuees from this storm. Basically areas that are overcrowded with people who are desperate, people who can't find their family members, people who lost all their possessions. That's where we're probably going to see violence. But just in looking at the initial response, it's pretty incredible to see that there was very little of that. You can even look on news footage and see people lining up, waiting to get bussed out of the area. Everybody standing there with ponchos, with literally all they could carry out of their home in their hands right there. And they're not mad, they're not fighting, they're just waiting to get on the bus. And they know that this stuff happens, there are a lot of people in need. And I just think the response and the attitudes of the Texans in this situation is notable. And I think we should always try to have that attitude, and we should try to be prepared for our own sakes, but also to help others in need as much as possible. So I know I'm kind of rambling here. This is just a quick thought, and we'll learn more about how this is handled as it progresses a little bit more. The flooding is still going up, so we're definitely not through this storm. We're probably not even we're probably just barely at the halfway point. Some areas are just getting hit by it, but it's something to watch. And I don't know, the attitude kind of was interesting, and I wanted to make a quick video about it. So if you've got any other thoughts about this, any other kind of first impressions that you saw, if you saw the same thing, go ahead and post them below. But I wanted to just kind of start talking about this because I thought it was really fascinating. And it's a good reminder that we should always be prepared. So until next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.